Today, we're presenting student spotlight. Speakers are Jun, the founder of 7EDU, who has 19 years of experience in school applications and K-12 education in the US. And Amy, one of our lead counselors, who's a fantastic teacher and a very experienced counselor and very well much liked by our students. And today's webinar is mainly a conversation between Amy and one of her students, who's our guest of honor, Izzy, who has received an offer from MIT not long ago through early application. I just want to mention one thing, okay? At 7EDU, protecting our students and families' privacy is at the top of our priorities. So we will not show Izzy's face and name. Any follow-up questions for her will be managed by our team later, okay? So, and Izzy is in her last year at high school, which is a very busy year, right? And she can only stay for about 30 minutes today. So we'll focus on her story first and then take more questions in the second half. And we really appreciate all the time and effort that Izzy has put in for this webinar. You know, it just shows that how much she likes to contribute to the community at large. Thanks so much, Izzy. And now I will turn the time to Amy. Amy, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Jimbo. And Izzy, welcome Izzy, everyone. So Izzy was one of my students this year, and we worked on our college applications together. So I'm going to throw you a question that you're very accustomed to, Izzy, since we practiced very long and hard on it for your interviews. Tell us a little about yourself, Isabella.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Izzy, and currently I'm interested in studying computational biology. Mainly because I really like computer science's applicability and problem-solving aspects, and biology, specifically biomedicine's usability and ability to help others. And I really started developing these passions back in high school, either through some of my courses or through my clubs, such as FRC Robotics and Technology Student Association. Outside of the strict academics, I like doing volunteer tutoring and also writing for the newspapers. And for fun, I really like just reading historical fiction books and spending time with my friends and playing games.
Okay, great. I think that was an 11 out of 10 response. If I were an admissions officer, that would be excellent. Now, I'm not sure if you guys heard all of that, but I think Izzy shared some of her academic interests, some of her extracurriculars, but more importantly, other small components that comprise her personality. And that's one thing I wanted to mention about a profile for an application, that it's more than just the numbers or the GPA, but it's the personal values, the personality traits, the core beliefs that comprise a student that we all want to show through within an application. So you may not know this, but Isabella is probably one of my most conscientious students. Everything she does, she's incredibly detail-oriented. We worked on a weekly basis for her applications. She also, as you can tell, she's very passionate about computer science. That's one of the most competitive majors currently, and she was admitted to MIT. For her extracurriculars, there's no strict profile that any student has to follow, but most importantly, I think you can tell that Isabella has a sense of humor, and she really likes having fun, right? She plays board games, she has good relationships with her family and her friends. So moving on to the application part, I want to ask you, Isabella, how did you prepare for college applications?
Yeah, I first started preparing back in July 2021, and at first it was just trying to, first of all, think about what I wanted to do in college, because back then I was still a little bit unsure about my specific major. And I was also trying to look at what schools interested me most based on their majors, extracurriculars, and also just their research opportunities. And I found that like online tours were really helpful because we couldn't be in person. And then from there, I think it was just trying to prepare for my essays. At the beginning, it was just brainstorming, thinking about what exactly I could write for each of the essays and think about like, the broad trajectory. And I think that's really what I did at the beginning.
Right. How many drafts did we go through for your essay?
The common at least 18, and then there was one time where we had to do a major revision, which was really difficult.
you were probably one of the students who drafted most consistently. Each week you brought to me your ideas for the essays, and then we would discuss them and then revise based on my suggestions each week. What would you say was the most challenging part of that process, just the application as a whole?
I think it was just kind of getting started with it, because at first there's like a lot of essay prompts that you need to consider, and at the beginning I had no idea what specifically I wanted to write. So what I
Mhm.
ended up having to do was just list out like 3 to 5 bullet points for each prompt. This one I could write the most about, or this one I feel is the most interesting and important to my experiences. And then from there I just brought it over to you, and we managed to like narrow it down to just a couple. I would write 1 or 2 drafts.
I want to go back to something you said, which is that you felt it was very helpful that you knew yourself, right? That you knew your interests, what mattered to you, what you can talk on. What advice do you have for future students who may be struggling with that process of self discovery? Like they're not sure what their interests are, or they're not sure they can write on what they can focus on.
Mhm. I think the main thing is just seeing, for example, if you do a lot of extracurriculars or like you participate in some things, what do you enjoy most about it? Like I really enjoyed Technology Student Association with like doing biotechnology and computer science in it. So that's when I started realizing that this is probably what I want to go into for college. And then that's kind of how I discovered it. And also just maybe like talking to teachers in classes that you enjoy the most is also really helpful, because they have a lot of insight on how that career path looks like and how it works out.
I think you mentioned to me once that you would go find your teachers and talk to them for an hour about this, right?
Yeah. An hour,
Mm.
yeah. Usually it's around like 20, 30 minutes after school. But I do remember one time in 11th grade, it was around an hour just talking about some specific thing I was interested in.
Definitely. I think it's very important to receive feedback and also just insight from other adults on whatever interests you may have. And I know that you, for one, Isabella, you're a very, very proactive student. Okay. How about how many schools did you apply to during the EA process? How was the school selection process?
Yeah, so I applied to 3 schools in during the EA, because I did EA, not REA or ED. And I think for the selection process, what I first did was I wanted to see which ones had a really good computational biology and like like pathway. And in that case, I found out like MIT was a really good one, and that's when I began like looking more in depth, such as on their websites and just like through Reddit blogs and also some subreddits that I was really interested in. And then from there, I just narrowed it down. I think just like being able to research and kind of navigate the labyrinth of a college website is probably one of the strongest skills at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. Some of their websites are kind of confusing despite being some of the top universities. Now, I know sometimes people will look at different factors for college selection. Uh, but I think sometimes people will select on different things, whether it's prestige or location, etc. Are there any factors that you focused on or that other people advised you to focus on during the selection process?
Yeah, so because from what I saw a lot online, computational biology, a lot of it was about research, and I felt that being able to like do conduct good research was really important for a good college, in my opinion. So for me personally, I was always trying to look for not companies, my bad, colleges that were really in depth with research. They had like really good, strong, either like summer programs or just normal Europe programs that I could go into as an undergraduate student. And that's what I focused on most.
Very good. Let's move on to the essay process, since I think for most people, they would say that the application process, the most stressful part is the essays. Would you agree with that, Isabella?
Yeah, I think essays are probably one of the more stressful things, because by that, kind of like by July 2021, a lot of the extracurriculars I've already just like done, and now it was just the essays and also a little bit of the interviews that were the final deciding factor.
Exactly. Then could you let everyone know at what time do you recommend preparing or drafting essays for your schools? Or what was your essay drafting process like?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a broad answer, but I think just as early as possible is the best way. That way, if there's anything that you don't really know what to answer, you can like sleep on it and you can think about it. So, for example, I try to think about like Common App essay first, because it was one of the biggest ones, and just like in June 2021, that's when I really started thinking about it. And I think that's just like the main important thing, just starting early and trying to be on top of things.
Definitely. I think sometimes people will say that in college in general, you start from freshman year, right? Because that's the part when you really start exploring your interests. Sometimes for the application and the other details, sometimes people are surprised that we recommend that students start so early in June or July. But I think if you look back on all the time we spent on your essays and all the applications, it almost sometimes it feels like that wasn't enough time, right? I definitely think the process was a lot less stressful because we front-ended a lot of it. I do want to ask, what did you find most challenging about drafting the essays?
The most challenging was really just the beginning of it, just trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what to write about.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was either I had no idea or I had too many ideas. And I think the most important thing when you have that many, either like too many ideas, is just thinking about which one was like I was the most involved in and what I was the most passionate about. And I could like express that through my writing. And if it was like I had too little ideas, then I would just try to sift through all of my experiences and all the things I've done in my high school career and just trying to figure out like which ones I could write about and which ones I felt involved in.
Mm-hmm. So for other students who may be going through that difficulty, right, what advice do you offer? Because I know you talked about, okay, so I try to think the one that I'm most involved in. You also said, I want to think about the one that I'm most passionate about. How do you think you demonstrated passion through your profile?
I think it was through following like the kind of like the typical phrase, uh, show not tell. Like if there was something I wanted to express, I wanted to do it like through a storytelling medium in a way because I felt that I could best express who what I felt and also I could best express like my passion towards something. And I think that was really important rather than just trying to think about what might like synchronize best with the application process. Because I felt that like whatever I was interested in, I could write more about, and I didn't have to like fake my passion and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's very important that if you're truly passionate about something, you should be able to write about it specifically, right? You should talk about the actions you took. You should talk about the specific detailed reasons why this thing is very meaningful to you. And I remember that's something I told you. Regarding the narrative portion, you mentioned there was a very challenging hurdle during the essay part. Do you mind if I share a bit about that challenge?
Sure.
Yeah, because I remember when we were probably, what was it, around, was it August or September? And then we were working on your Common App, right? And then we were concerned that it wasn't engaging enough. And then I had given you some feedback and suggestions. And you had written according to my feedback and suggestions. And then you came back, you showed me, I said, no, this is still not good enough. It still needs to be better, right? I gave you some suggestions on that. And I could tell that at the time it was difficult, right? Because we've been working on it for a long time and we still wanted to revise because we wanted to make it perfect. And it was generally, I was worried that week, but then you came back to me the next week and you'd written 3 different versions of that essay based on my suggestions. And you asked me, which version do you like the best? And then I told you. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that was back in like
Yeah.
September.
When was that again?
Early September, I think.
Early September. Yeah. So it was, and I think that was the part when I was like, okay, Izzy, you have what it takes, right? Because not only are we good, like it's always collaborative, right? You always have your own ideas that you share with me that I can give you my feedback on, but you have the grit that even when things get difficult and I tell you, no, I still want this to be better, you went above and beyond everything to do your best on all the assignments. Or I shouldn't say the assignments. I think, the application, everything. I think that's what I definitely know about you from the time we've known each other. I do want to follow up with another thing that I remember you mentioning to me, because I remember when we were first brainstorming, you had a concern that I think a lot of students have, which is I don't feel my experiences are unique enough. Or you said, I think I don't feel like the challenges I've undergone are significant enough. But I think the phrase you used was it was very first world problems. And we remember we kind of talked about that. We brainstormed through that, right? So what advice do you have for students who probably feel the same way as you did?
Yeah, I think that like this circumstance, for example, like with that quote unquote first world problem, It's more of just like a catalyst towards the essay. The main focus of the essay is not just about your experience, but also like what I learned from the experience and also just like how I dealt with the experience. Because sometimes, like, I bet a lot of people have done almost everything that I've written about in my essays, but I also feel that maybe the way that I try like resolve that issue or go around that issue was like something I could write more uniquely about. And I think that was kind of the main challenge and also the main path to success, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. Even if people undergo perhaps in general strokes, the broad strokes, a similar challenge, I absolutely agree that the lessons we take from them, the small details are what matters. And at the end of the day, as we learn, you don't have to win like a Nobel Prize or have some traumatic tragedy in order to gain admittance to a college like MIT, right? Everyone has something unique about them.
That's
That's
exactly where the question coming from. Yeah.
yeah.
I really enjoyed the conversation. Sorry for the interruption, but I do see, I think the audience is kind of like, can't wait to ask the question and to dig into more about you. Okay, just feel free to say no if you don't want to share, Elizabeth, and I'm going to, wrap up some questions, okay? I think many of the parents, they ask you about like what the summer program you did during your 10th, 11th grade. Did you win any Olympia award? What is the kind of like, outstanding activity you did? Do you want to share a little bit? And then I can basically, share more later. Yeah. Just yes or no. Did you win any Olympia award? Yes or no? Let's make it simple.
Kind of, yes. USACO, but yeah, not like math Olympiad or national or like international.
Okay. Did you publish any research paper? Yes or no?
Nope.
Okay. What did you do on your 10th or 11th grade summer? What are summer programs? Did you join any summer programs?
Nothing too major, no internships or research. I just did like a college course on computer science.
Okay. And then I think they're going to be, more curious, like how possible, why? Okay. So later, maybe we can just talk a little bit more. I feel like one thing we need everybody to understand is like, it's not about what program, someone joined or did, or what competition they win, right? So they can't just get into the colleges. So I think it's all about the whole entire person, like the whole person. So we said a no to every questions. Did you create a nonprofit? Yes or no?
Kind of, but not really.
No. Okay, so that's no. All right, cool. So we said a no to everything, and now they say, could you share your thoughts about other components of the application beyond the essay writing? For example, course selection, AP, standardized test.
Okay, sure. So I'll just go through my one. So for example, for course selection, I think just being able to choose one of the more like rigorous but also like actually feasible courses that you can take. For example, like I really want to go into computational biology. So I just exhausted all the courses in my school for computer science and biology. But at the same time, like I didn't exactly focus too much on like some other like really high level AP courses that were offered in my school. Or for example, like multivariable calculus. I didn't do that one, but it was just focusing on what I was interested in a lot. AP and standardized tests. So APs, I just followed the rule that like if I took the class, then I would take the test. And sometimes if there was a AP test that I felt confident in, or I knew I could self-study because I was interested in the topic, I would also just do those ones as well.
How much is your SAT or ACT test?
I took 10 AP tests and then I got above a 1550 on my SAT.
Great. All right. I think that's the data that audience would like to know. All right. So Amy, so you can continue your question, and after you, and I have like two more.
Okay, thank you, June. I know that is something that I think all the parents are curious about. But I think I just really want you guys to know from the responses, everyone in the audience, that there's no one correct like data profile, right? You'll notice that maybe you're surprised that Isabella didn't publish a paper because you thought that everyone who admitted to MIT published a paper, right? That's not necessary. Isabella has so many other like so many great qualities that I think she was able to demonstrate through her application, through her essays, through her interview, and through the entire holistic process that is not just about focusing on those numbers in the resume, though they are important, right? It's so much more than that. Okay. Well, I think to keep on going with that, I wonder maybe we can talk a bit about the interview process because I think people are interested about that. So first, is there an interview process for MIT? How did you prepare for the interview?
Yeah, so MIT and I think a lot of other like schools like Harvard, they all have an interview process, and I think most of the time they reach out to you. But I know for like some schools that you have to take the initiative. And then in terms of preparation, what I did was I just first of all tried to find the questions that they were most likely to ask. For example, they're like often expected questionnaires online. Reddit once again, I always go to that, and that provided me some help as well. And then just trying to think of possible answers I could ask. I'm sorry, possible answers I could provide and questions that I could ask. And then I think also just being able to like try to be prepared to be informal but also polite. Like no need to wear a suit, but at the same time just be respectful and just try to have a natural two-way conversation was kind of just the way I try to approach it.
Okay, perfect. Right. So, yeah, interview process. I know you practice a lot and we practice as well. One follow-up question, I think I have around three more questions and then we can wrap it up. So, one thing is, what do you think the counselors at 7EDU did the most to support you? Do you have any suggestions on how to work best with a counselor?
Yeah, so I think the best way for support was first of all just brainstorming and thinking about what ideas once I narrowed them down would be the best. And then also just like the revisions and read overs. Like I remember multiple times because we would meet on Saturday, I would finish writing finish doing the revisions sometimes by like Monday and Tuesday, and then I would kind of embarrassingly just like email you like, "Hey Amy, could you provide more feedback?" And then like the counselor like was always there and willing to help. I think just like taking the initiative and also being able to ask for help. That was like how I really got help from the counselors, and also just being able to ask questions without like being judged for sometimes some of my very strange or like very seemingly straightforward questions that I just didn't know the answer to.
None of them were embarrassing. And I also, one thing I always appreciate about you was just how consistently you drafted. Because I tell all my students, if you have revisions, just email me. And I think you were one of the few that took me up on the offer every single week. Definitely. Do you have any recommendations on how? Okay, I think you did answer that with the asking questions and being proactive, right? What about the parents' role in the process? Because I know we have a lot of parents here, right? Every parent wants to help their child, but a lot of parents may not be sure what the best way is. So I know your parents were very supportive. So how do you feel a parent can support his or her child during this process?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the most important thing is that like the parents can play a supporting role. For example, I mean like they can like support the student whether emotionally or even just like through the process, but also it's just to make sure that the overall voice of the student, especially through the essay is still the voice of the student. And also just like for example, I know that like being able to just like talk about stuff to my parents and just like they acted as a bouncing board sometimes when I was thinking about some of my brainstorming essays. That was really important, but also at the same time just being sure to like not stress out the student, because I think like especially near the end the students are like more than capable of stressing themselves out, and just being able to calm down sometimes is really just like goes a long way.
I want to add a little bit more for the parents part. So I have been having meeting with you and your dad. I never met your mom, but I think she's a great mom as well. So I see your dad majorly supporting you through the entire process. And I think something that me remember the most clearly is like the way how your dad supports you. Because when we have the conversation, your dad is just trying to remind you about things you did, but actually you don't think that's kind of like outstanding or amazing. You're a very humble person, but your dad always kind of like try to remind you, hey, you did this and you did that. I think that's a really great resource to kind of like let us know you better and boost your confidence. And I think for the MIT, the same thing. And at the beginning, I think your dad thinks that maybe that's too aggressive. and then we say like, wait, let's try it. If you want to try, let's just give it a try. I feel like your dad is just play a very happy supporter role. Because I remember every time we met, like your dad is like pretty happy. And of course, when he says something and he's looking at your face to see if you like him to say it or not, and he always respect you to ask your opinion. I think that I see a very good relationship between you and your parents. Yeah, that's from my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, give a big hug and a credit to your dad. Okay, say thank you to him.
I'll be sure to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And just final question from me. What are 2 pieces of advice you would give to college application students?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my first one and the biggest one, I think, is just, like I said before, start as early as possible and be on top of things. That doesn't mean you have to like finish writing all your essays for all of your colleges within like 1 week of now, but just being able to like quickly preview and just understand like this is what I may need to do in my possible workload in the future. And also just like being, if you see a question, ask right away, whether it's to the college counselors, your school counselor, your teachers, or like even the school, this college's email itself. Because I remember I had to do that a few times. Because no offense to them, but their website was kind of unclear at times, and I just needed that extra sense of like, oh, I knew what I was doing. And I think the second one is just knowing what you want to do. So, for example, like kind of like what kind of major do you want to go into, and like it doesn't have to be so specific, like I want to specifically do natural language processing for understanding protein development, but just like an overarching kind of like this is what I'm interested in doing. And also just understanding the colleges as well, because once you have that kind of understanding, it's a lot easier at least to figure out trajectory on what you want to do. Because otherwise you sit in front of your computer and then you just like stare at a few essays and you're not really sure where to begin. So I think just taking a step back, thinking about it first, and then diving in is a really important way.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And I feel like the audience question is getting like, more and more direct. Okay, I hope you don't mind. So someone asked, what level did you reach for the U cycle?
I only reached gold level.
Okay, gold level, that's good enough. All right. So they even ask you unweighted the GPA if you want to share. Yeah, if you don't, you just say no. That's fine as well.
My unweighted GPA was a 4.0.
Okay.
But I don't think, just like a brief thing, GPA isn't like the end all be all, because like there are definitely people out there who got like a 3.95. That doesn't mean they're like quote unquote dumb or anything. It just means that maybe there was an extraneous circumstance that happened during their time that they weren't able to like maybe get an A on everything. So I don't think like a GPA is a necessary determining factor. It's definitely nice, but it's not like MIT admission officer or like any college officer is going to be like not a 4.0, like rejected and stuff.
Okay. All right. So I think last but not least, I would like to give some advice to the parents and also the students like next year or the year after. So just give some like general using one sentence.
Sure.
What do you wish them to do? Like let's say the parents first.
Play a supporting role and be there for the student.
Great. What about the students?
Be proactive, take initiative, and make sure to listen to advice.
Great. And I do see your hard working get a result. So great job, Elizabeth. And thank you. Thank you for sharing with all the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. You're the first one to share this year, and you're not last one. So next time when we're going to invite more students to share, welcome to join back to hear what other students going to talk about, right? So we also have some students, they would like to share MIT style and Stanford, Harvard style. They're different and they should be different, right, Amy?
Yeah, like I think we've been saying there's no one cookie cutter rule, because I think sometimes parents, you just want like, if I do exactly this, 100% I'm going to get admission, right? People do not work that way. Admissions do not work that way. It's more about really, I think, seeing what the standout characteristics of the specific student is and having that come out the most, because each application should be unique to the student.
Yes, that And if you want to ask question, do you have to win the math competition or whatever to enter MIT? No, you don't have to. You don't have to. So if you look at a different student profile, there are so many different, paths to go to the same school. The school looking for the outstanding students, different profile, different background. So there is no standardized, formula. So just don't copy that. Okay, that's gonna only make you feel like stressful and no direction. Yeah. So I was just about to share. There's like so many information online. If you look at the competition, you might find like thousands of competition. Are you gonna all join them? If you spend the time there, is that possible for you to get all of them? I mean, even you get all of them, is that guarantee you're gonna get into the top school? No, it's not, right? So what is the best way? Just like Amy and also Elizabeth shared, the whole person, the passion, right? It sounds vague, but actually it's not vague. So if you look at the summer, 10th, 9th, 11th grade, and it's not about like what program you join, it's about the line, the storyline.
Yeah, I think I don't think the admissions process is I think the term is opaque, right? It's not very clear. All of us want answers, but unless, some of us goes interview someone, we're not going to get specifics. So one thing I will say is that I like what June said, which is like, don't try to constantly compare yourself to other people. I know it's tempting, sometimes it can help, but I remember once a student came to me during a meeting and she's like, I just feel so depressed. Like I feel so like no energy. And I asked her why. And she said, I went online and I looked at all these profiles of people who were applying to the same school I am. I feel like I don't match up to them. Right. I just said, why would you do that? One, the people online is such a limited sample. And two, that does not mean anything. Right. The people who are admitted, there is no one tried and true formula. Although your GPA, your resume, your activity is important, I think some analogy I give, I'm going to give my my blockbuster movie analogy. I will say that sometimes, especially for the very competitive schools, it's not a matter of qualification. I think each year there are thousands of students that are qualified that will not be admitted. Just like every time they try to cast for a blockbuster film major role, there must be thousands of actors that are qualified. But only one person gets that spot because that admissions officer or that director has a vision of what they want in their school, right? They're looking for that special spark in that person. And so I think the purpose of an application and perhaps of a counselor is that when you engage with the students, you want to figure out what their spark is. You want to communicate that to the admissions officer so that when they see that profile, they'll be like, okay, there is something special about this. This is what I'm looking for in my student body. This is what I want to admit. It's not just, this is my SAT score, this is my math competition score, etc. For that.
And I think the parents also would like to know more about any other response from the EA schools. Like how many EA schools is it?
Right. I have students who apply to only one. But even then, I think I see someone say, like, what is EA? So I think there are two kinds. Early just means it has an earlier deadline, right? There are two kinds. There's binding and there's non-binding. Early decision is binding, meaning that if you're accepted, you must attend. MIT is non-binding. They're early action only, which just means you apply early, they will give you a response early, but you are not obligated to attend. Another thing about MIT EA is that if you go look at the admission rates, there's only a 1% difference between their regular decision admission rates and their early action admission rates. So it's not as if it's significantly easier to get an MIT EA at all. However, one reason why I recommend for students to apply early is just really application timeline management. You do not want to be working on 15 applications in December because of all these RD deadlines, right? I think it's wiser to front load the ones that you feel are important to you. So that way you can apply early, probably when you are less stressed from school. And also you can receive a decision early and you have perhaps some more security if it's a good decision.
Mm-hmm. And I think at the beginning, you spent a lot of time, sharing about the SE process, which we believe this is the most important part because we believe like the SE played an important part for the success of her application. But still, like, many parents would like to skip to the data part, like the facts. what program, courses, test the score, activity, research, competition instead of essay. Well, what do you think about that? Because I do see a lot of parents try to write down how amazing the kids is. What is the accomplishment? So basically, entire essay wrote a lot about the accomplishment. It's just like pretty showy, and that's one thing. But the other thing is, like, you already mentioned that in your activity list. Why you mentioned it again? It just cannot show your whole person. So I do say, like, the whole person is quite important because they have to see who you are, right? Through the limited resources. Yeah. So what do you think about the essay role? Yeah. It's just not about writing an essay. I know you have been repeating all the time. Yeah.
No, I understand, but I think it's very important, right? Because usually when we get the application, their GPA is set, right? Their SAT score is set. Their extracurriculars are set. So there's not a lot of stuff we can change about that, but we can move mountains with our essays.
Yeah, that's for last stage.
That's the last stage, right? So that is where you want to put most of your attention for at least during the application process. Now, I've worked with a lot of students, so I've seen actually a lot of what you may call similar profiles and what they have with research, with competitions, with GPA, with everything. And I will say that every successful student I had, in their application, we never talked about their competitions. We never talked about, like, I did, like, I was president of XYZ. We talked about personal stories. We talked about things that would demonstrate, like their compassion, what they care about. Like when you read it, you feel like I know who this person is because I hear their voice. Something like that. Yeah, exactly.
That's why I feel so confident putting students in your hand in the last stage of the application. So, usually we decide which essay specialist, which counselor to work with based on student personality. So when I first met it,
I have a question for Amy, basically. So I really enjoyed the conversation with Easy today. So she appears to be a person who can really think and talk on her feet and hold very good conversation with adults, right? And I remember, Amy, you mentioned that you helped her doing the interview preparation, right? Would you share something about that?
Sure. So a lot of it was just that I pretended to be an interviewer or to the essays. Like she would give me her response and I give her critique and feedback. But I think for the interview, I would say that it's not as formal as a job interview. They're not going to grill you on like, oh, can you do the Hello World program for computer science? But it's going to be a slightly informal conversation with someone what is your academic interest? Like, what do you want to study? Why do you want to attend our school? And similar to the rest of the application, is just they want to get to know you as a person, right? So they can give some feedback to the admissions board that is waiting on it.
Right. So do you think there are any differences between interviewing with MIT and other schools? Did you prepare Izzy specifically just for MIT's interview?
I definitely think you need to be prepared for different schools, just in the sense that you should know enough information about the school you're interviewing for that you can give a very convincing answer for why you want to attend this school exactly, right? And you should also prepare questions for the school in question during your interview. So I remember for Izzy, we did practice for different schools for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Amy. And we do have some questions from parents like, hey, can you tell more about how you work with shy students? I feel like that's personality. So Amy is really good at working with students who is like calm and doesn't really want to show themselves. I think that's part of because your personality. I feel like I feel very comfortable when I talk to you, Amy. So how you work with how you work with the shy students? Do you want to share a little bit?
I think usually after a while they open up to you, right? Because they have to trust. I think people are shy just because they feel afraid. Like I remember I talked to one of your students, June, who I won't name, and then she said I'm very shy. And she's like, oh. I was like, oh, why? And it's like, so because talking to people is scary. She said, yeah, scary, right? So, right. So once they just feel comfortable with you, I think that's when they open up, right? Because I generally care for all my students, right? I have their best interests at heart, and I hope that in my interactions with them, that's demonstrated. And I think that's how you build up trust, right? for that.
Yes, yes, I agree. And some students, they like the counselor to be, more passionate. For example, I
Yes.
fit some of the students. They love me, going crazy with them together. But sometimes I have to really hold. And sometimes even I hold, I still feel like I'm going to scare them away. So usually I will introduce to Amy. And whenever they talk to you, they always told me like, oh, I like Amy a lot. And she's so sweet and so warm. And I feel so comfortable talking to her. I was like, great. And sometimes she shared the essay with you and they don't want me to take a look at it. They're like, oh,
Really?
this is like private. I don't want you to take a look at it. I was like, sure, as long as you're good. So I talked to Amy and like, good, everything is good. All right. So it really depends on personality. Those like a little young mind, and they just kind of like very cute and very interesting. Yeah. As a person. Yeah.
Yeah, and we work as a team, June. So usually with students, even though we have a general counselor, we'll always support each other with a student. Like sometimes I need help with a student, so I turn to you. And then you
Okay.
help a student, you turn to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So for whoever concerned, we work as a team,
Yeah, I think parents always want what's best for their child, but sometimes it's difficult, right, to determine. So I hope that parents, if they work with us, they can trust us, right? Because I think that's important, right? Not only that the student trusts us, but parents trust us also, trust our advice that we also want what's best for their kid as well. And we have been doing this for a long time too.
Yes.
And I think if you listen to Illa, she's clearly a person who knows what she wants.
Yes.
Right? And that is years of, her parents being supportive, supporting her interests, right? Allowing her to discover what she's truly passionate about and not, not being like Tiger Mom. So I think everyone knows Tiger Mom, right?
Yeah. And most of the time she communicated with us directly by herself. I think I met her dad like having meeting together 3 times total. Yeah, that's all. Most of the time, she handled her things. I think that's kind of like a sign when you step too much into your kids' tasks, which means like your kid's gonna step out or aside, which means the result won't be good, even you try so hard, because it's not like you're gonna get in there, right?
So, Jane and Amy, I understand that you mentioned that the entire team worked together to help every student, right? So I understand you are trying to help students to select competitions and also independent research programs. And we got some like a good news lately from the writing awards, right? Would you share something about that?
Oh, sure. We had a lot of students who, participated in Scholastic Writing Award, which I highly recommend, even if you're STEM oriented, right? I think June shared, like Isabella is very passionate about history. She loves history. Read history book all the time, watch history documentaries. Sometimes we would just have conversations on it. And I think it definitely helped her in her STEM studies as well. So the Scholastic Writing Competition, you can do short story, creative fiction, etc. We had quite a few students who won the Gold Key and the Silver Key Award.
Yes.
Congratulations to them.
Yeah. At the same time, we also have like New York Times competition, stuff like that. But again, we also need to evaluate student personality. We don't really encourage every student to join the competition because some students, they just can't afford another fail. They can't afford it, because they need to build up their confidence first. It's very important. Some of the confidence already smashed by, I don't know, peers, parents, or whatever the reason. So you need to build up confidence. Don't rush into competition because if they fail again, there is no way for you to continue for a future project. So some students, parents do mention about the nonprofit stuff. I would say you really cannot, create a nonprofit that can just guarantee you get somewhere because you have to do something, right? So Isabella didn't create any nonprofit organization, but she did some nonprofit project, which she really did a lot of work, right? So it's not about register something and then just be there. It's about what she did, what the student accomplished. I think that's kind of like important. And I do want to mention something about frustration, failure, because you do have to let the students to go through something in order to get some materials in the future, right? For example, the biggest failure is about getting B, or the biggest failure is like, they fight with one student, right, or the classmate. That doesn't count, right? They couldn't have like a deep thinking about their life. So, when you do counseling, it's not about the counselor going to make your life way easier. With parents is smooth already, with counselor it becomes smoother. And then how are they going to get in feeling, right? How are they going to get the deeper thinking about life. So some of the plan is kind of like let them to challenge and to go through some frustration. And then they may not get it, they may get it, but there's like a conversation behind every single project action. I feel like that's the important part, and that's the biggest value most of the time that parents could not recognize.
Yeah, exactly. If you go look at it, like Della does journalism, but she does not do any of those activities because she wants to get into a college, right? If you talk to her about her involvement in those activities, why she feels that's important, and not just her, all my students who are successful, they give you genuine reasons about how they want to help the community, about why it's valuable from X perspective. So I think, that's definitely something to cultivate, right? It's not just competition for competition's sake, but also what do I learn from this competition, right? Look at the bigger picture, something like that.
Yes. We also have some question coming. And do we help students to identify their major too? Yes, we do. And something I want to share, but I don't have too much time. So students don't know their major sometimes is because they don't know how many departments, how the college work. They don't know. That's why they say they don't know, right? So we give them knowledge first. We explain them about different, interest, direction, how far they can go, where they can go. And then they probably can tell you what they like. For example, if you show them about like, hey, this major in the college, what course it's going to study, right? What a project it's going to lead to. So, and then we give them like more detail. They will understand it better. Of course, everybody have things they like, they don't like. Sometimes they just don't tell, or they just tell it doesn't work. So they say they don't know. We also do the strengths finding, and we also do the education psychology related interaction with the students to figure out their passion and their interest. So yes, we do. Okay. All right, so one of the students asked how many computer science courses. I think that's like very detailed question about the topic story for the 650 words essay. We can't share.
We're not going to share that. And also, it's not going to help you because that was her essay. Your child cannot write the exact same essay she did. Right.
It's her life as well. Yeah. So we are also inviting more students to come in to share their story. I think next time we're going to share is a story that's going to blow your mind again. Is a student with a lot of B and even C, but got into NYU business school. So that could be an amazing story as well. And you will see like there's no summer program, there's nothing. And when he came to me, it's already too late, like 10th grade, but we made it happen. Yeah. So it's an amazing story. I can't wait to share. I'm contacting him to confirm the date. Just stay tuned, and we're gonna be in touch soon. Thank you, Amy, so much. You're the best teacher ever, best counselor ever.
Yeah, thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, it was a great conversation, and hope everyone has learned something. So we'll wrap it up. And 7EDU's spring classes and summer camps are open for registration. So please feel free to contact us, follow us, or visit our website. And stay tuned for more 7EDU's webinars, okay? Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you being here. And then we have to say one thing, like a happy Chinese New Year, okay? Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.